We are back with the silly stories of sideways schools. It just gets more and more outrageous. Of course. All right, chapter 7 is called Calvin. Calvin had a big round face. Calvin, said Mrs. Jules, I want you to take this note to Miss Zarves for me. Miss Zarves? Asked Calvin. Yes, Miss Zarves. You know where she is, don't you? Yes, she's on the 19th story. That's right, Calvin, said Mrs. Jules. Take it to her. Calvin didn't move. Well, what are you waiting for? Asked Mrs. Jules. She's on the 19th story, Calvin said. Yes, we have already established that fact, said Mrs. Jules. The 19th story, Calvin repeated. Yes, Calvin, the 19th story, said Mrs. Jules. Now take it to her before I lose my patience. But, Mrs. Jules, said Calvin. Now, Calvin, said Mrs. Jules, unless you would rather go home on the kindergarten bus. Yes, ma'am, said Calvin. Slowly he walked to the door. Ha, 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 laughed Terence. Take it to the 19th story. So why is it such a big deal to take it to the 19th story? Oh, you'll find out. Calvin stood outside the door to the classroom. He didn't know where to go. As you know, the builder of Wayside School, he accidentally built it sideways. But he also forgot to build the 19th story. He built the 18th and the 20th, but not the 19th. He said he was very sorry. And there's also no Miss Zarves. Miss Zarves taught the class in the 19th story. Since there was no 19th story, there was no Miss Zarves. And besides that, as if Calvin didn't have enough problems, there was no note. Mrs. Jules had never given Calvin a note. Boy, this is just great, thought Calvin, just great. I'm supposed to take a note I don't have to a teacher who doesn't exist, who teaches on a story that was never built. He didn't know what to do. He walked down to the 18th story, then back up to the 20th story, then back down to the 18th, and back up to the 20th. There was no 19th story. There never was a 19th story, and there never will be a 19th story. Calvin walked down to the administration office. He decided to put the note in Miss Zarves' mailbox. That was pretty good thinking. But there wasn't one of those either. That didn't bother Calvin too much because he still didn't have a note. Calvin looked out the window and saw Louis, the art teacher, shooting baskets. Louis will know what to do, he thought. Calvin went outside. Hey, Louis, Calvin called. Hi, Calvin, said Louis. He tossed him the basketball. Calvin dribbled up and took a shot. He missed. Louis tipped it in. Do you want to play a game? Louis asked. I don't have time, said Calvin. I have to deliver a note to Miss Zarves on the 19th story. Then what are you doing all the way down here? Louis asked. There is no 19th story, said Calvin. Then where is Miss Zarves? Asked Louis. There is no Miss Zarves, said Calvin. What are you going to do with the note? There is no note, said Calvin. I understand, said Louis. That's good, because I sure don't, said Calvin. It's very simple. You are not supposed to take no notes to no teachers. You already haven't done it. Calvin still didn't understand. I don't know that I do either. I'll just have to tell Mrs. Jules that I couldn't deliver the note, he said. That's good, said Louis. The truth is always best. Besides, I don't think I understand what I just said either. Calvin walked up the 30 flights of stairs to Mrs. Jules' class. Thank you very much, Calvin, said Mrs. Jules. Calvin said, but Mrs. Jules interrupted him. That was a very important note, and I'm glad I'm able to count on you. Yes, but you see, said Calvin, you delivered the note to Miss Zarves on the 19th story, asked Jason. How did you do it? What do you mean, how did he do it, asked Mrs. Jules. He gave Miss Zarves the note. Some people, Jason, are responsible. But you see, Mrs. Jules, said Calvin. The note was very important, said Mrs. Jules. I told Miss Zarves not to meet me for lunch. Don't worry, said Calvin. She won't. Good, said Mrs. Jules. I have a coffee can full of Tootsie Roll Pops on my desk. You may help yourself to one for being such a good messenger. Thanks, said Calvin, but really, it was nothing. So no teacher, no 19th story, no note. No sense